This is a Film Stories original podcast.
We made this.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey!
Hello everyone and welcome to Shipwrecked and Comatose, the Red Dwarf podcast here on the We Made This podcast network. My name is Kurt and I have my co-host with me, Mr. Mark Adams. Mark,
Hiya.
how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good, mate, I'm good.
It's always a good day when we're chatting about Red Dwarf, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it is. And you know, we're 7 series in now. You know, we've done a few episodes.
We have. And people actually listen, which is very flattering. Tar.
Yeah, and this should be the final episode of the series, but it isn't.
No.
So yeah, it's something new and unique for us. And joining us is returning guest, Mr. Matt Latham. Matt, we've talked about Blue. How are you feeling about that? Are you feeling euphoric after talking about that, or how are your general thoughts?
Yeah, I can annoy you all about the next episode I want to talk about now, so it's fine.
Okay, so what would that be?
I'm guessing it's Trojan.
Trojan.
Yeah. You talk about it all the bloody time. Even I know there's a episode called Trojan. I'm not in the fucking series because I'm not allowed.
Oh man, I can't wait for Mark to go. God, you hoped too much. It was crap.
Yeah. Oh, you built that up.
Is Trojan the one with all the... I've seen an image where they're all Crichton. Is Trojan the one where they're all
No.
Crichton?
That's series 12.
Oh.
He's 12. Yeah, you got that.
I'm not allowed to watch that either.
Yeah.
As I say, when we've had our third or fourth can of lager and we're all together in that room, you know, it'll be a good session. You know, I might do Red Dwarf 10 in one night. That'll be great.
That's such a good idea. And by the time we get to the last episode, we're hammered.
And then
Apart from Colin.
yeah, well, yeah, it's true.
Yeah, apart from Colin. Yeah.
He'll probably have to host.
Yeah.
He'll be the only one that makes any fucking sense.
Yes.
Anyway, we're not talking about that, are we? We're talking about an episode called Beyond a Joke, which is Red Dwarf Series 7, Episode 6, written by Robert Llewellyn and Doug Naylor, and is directed by Ed Bye. Now, this was written, well, let me rephrase that. This had input from Robert Llewellyn. Do you all know the history behind this episode and how Robert got involved in this at all?
He does mention it a little bit in the commentary, and he also said that he aimed to actually make it a very, very Crichton light episode, which isn't what happened.
Yeah, I think in the book, the Jane Killick book, Status This League, he talks about how he had so many ideas and there was scripts and story ideas that he's been developing over the years, some of them really, really bad. And he started to get this kind of idea formulated into his brain, and there was several rewrites, as you say. It was he was really like sort of having these ideas like the Crichton, headless Crichton, when he's walking around saying, oh, well, I don't have to wear the head because I'm headless and all that type of thing. And then before you know it, you know, Doug Naylor writes 70, he says at least 70-30 is what he's saying that Doug Naylor wrote out of this episode. And even to the point where, I don't think this is in the book, but even to the point where there was almost a spare head 3, which would have meant he would have had 3 heads, not just the 2. So it is funny how TV works, isn't it, really?
Some of the other ideas were mentioned on the commentary as well. And one of them was the gay ray, where they get hit by a ray gun that makes them gay. I'm glad they didn't make that one. UFO spotting is all due to time travel from Red Dwarf. So all of the UFO spots that have ever happened would be explained by a Red Dwarf episode.
So we'd get a Roswell kind of JFK kind of episode, right? Okay.
Yeah, and the third one, everybody's Crichton. So, what we're talking about, what did you say that episode was in Series 12?
I don't remember the name of it, but it's in episode 12.
Siliconia.
So, the idea was had in the 90s. They talked about the idea in about 2004 when they recorded the commentary, and it didn't happen until whenever the fuck Series 12 happens. So that's actually fascinating. That's actually really fascinating, isn't it? That idea did eventually become a thing. I like that.
I've got a feeling the idea that Robert Llewellyn wants the others to suffer has probably been around since the end of Series 3, I think. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that came up in the next 3 million years thing where there's a bit where they're all talking, and I think he's saying, he goes, about bloody time.
And I think, Matt, you're a music person. I think in demos that I've heard of bands that I really like, that you can hear, like, all the kind of the hidden bootleg tapes of demos and stuff, that you'll hear something which will later come on like 4 albums later. That is something that happens a lot, where you either get like a phrase or, like a riff or something like that they might play with.
A motif.
Yeah. I think Psycho Muse, for example, they play Stockholm Syndrome at a festival like years before that song came out. U2 have done it. There's loads of, like, most artists probably do have it. I know I had an idea when I was playing the band for a while, and that eventually became something. And it's one of those things where ideas will always stick with you, and you just need to find the right concoction to pull it all together. And if TV shows are the same, I know that TV shows are exactly the same. Someone will have an idea in season 1, or even like second, third season, it might not appear till the 9th season. So it's certainly interesting how art works that way.
Mm-hmm. Seeing as we're talking about the commentary earlier, I normally do it at the end of the episode. There was only one other thing of note during the entire commentary, and it was some early thousands ick that I was not pleased with at all, because I generally kind of admire Craig Charles. I think he's an incredibly eclectic, capable, and interesting man. At the start, he describes Danny John Jules playing the cat as pouncing around like a big puff. And that commentary track was put on to all the DVDs and all the subsequent Blu-rays, and the re-release Blu-ray, they didn't think to edit that out. Not okay. And I'm even for 2004, when it was recorded, I'm actually genuinely disappointed that Craig Charles said something like that, because I don't believe he's properly homophobic. I just think it's just fucking thoughtless. And I found it really unpleasant, because as someone I admire, using a slur isn't nice. But we'll move on from that. I wanted to mention it, but what else can I say? It sucked, but yeah, I'll live, I suppose.
So, talking about sucking, let's talk about the episode.
I was going to say something deep and meaningful here. Okay, so let me speak about deep and meaningful first, and then we can talk about
deep and what?
Deep and meaningful.
Okay. I made a gag about dicks after someone said a homophobic thing. I feel like I've balanced the world.
Okay. Oh my God. I'm trying to say something really poignant, and it's not working.
For me? No.
Don Henderson, the simulant in this episode, who sadly died not long after this episode had aired.
Yeah.
He had throat cancer, and I think it's wonderful that he managed to get to play this character. He was General Targ in Star Wars, and the fact that you think about the way that he's talking, and you can hear it in his voice, and how much struggle he has, and I think it's a memorable character as well. I do think it is a character I do remember.
I think the voice adds to the character, particularly "I never get invited to parties" was wonderful.
Yeah.
That would have been less of a line if it hadn't been delivered with his "I've got throat cancer" voice. I think it adds to the character in a really tragic but kind of amazing way.
Yeah. Mark, cover your ears for a second. I need to ask Kurt a question which will refer to a future episode.
Wave when I can put them back in.
Mark Adams. Fast forward 30 seconds.
Hoagie.
I was going to mention Hoagie.
I'm wondering whether, if they could, Hoagie would have been this character. If Don Henson was still with us, whether
maybe.
Hoagie would have been either that or whether they perhaps would have thought that that simulant would be brought back, but instead they had to create Hoagie instead.
So anyway, let's start from the top. So we pass an old derelict spaceship, the SS Centauri.
Could you briefly mention about the overall thoughts of the episode?
Well, you said it sucked, so no. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. What do you think? So, Matt, what do you think of this episode?
I'm not a fan.
Are you not a fan?
No, because I remember, like, I can never remember it, because I was coming to it thinking, like, because the blurb was like, oh, going to Pride and Prejudice land, and I was like, oh, so this is one where they're going to Pride and Prejudice, and I couldn't remember where the hell the episode went after that, and
right.
I can never remember it. I've forgotten pretty much all the stuff that happened in this post the tank, and yeah, and I don't know, there's just, yeah, I don't know, it just seems quite lacking in comparison to other episodes, particularly when we've just come from Blue.
I completely disagree. This episode's fantastic. Pride and Prejudice Land is hilarious. The simulant and the yeah, it's great. It's great. Well, it's great. Kurt, are you somewhere in between the two of us?
I am actually, yeah. I think this epitomises what we were saying last week about Series 7, that Series 7, yes, is underrated, but it has a diverse opinion. It's very diverse. Like, so if you, so say for example, Matt, we ask you what is your least favourite episode of this series, would you say?
Probably this one.
Okay. Mark, so far, is there anything that's changed your mind so far? Which would be your least favourite?
I think I've enjoyed them all so far, but Ouroboros maybe is the one I've enjoyed the least. I think the concept's a bit ropey when it comes to the wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff. I didn't like that, but I genuinely enjoyed all of them. Yeah, but Ouroboros maybe is the one I like the least.
Matt, and wait for me to say what mine is.
Yeah, what is yours?
Mark knows what mine is.
I mean, yes, but you should say everybody gets a turn, even though you're horribly wrong.
Stuck me a clipper.
No, wrong. Funny. Crocodile is the best thing.
Not
Love
funny.
the crocodile.
No. Appalling episode.
It's great. It's funny. I loved it.
I'm not going back into that detail, but I don't think it's an appalling episode. I think there's some really, really bad things in it. But we're here to talk about an episode that Matt finds his least favourite. But to get on to his favourite, he had to do it.
Yeah.
Talk about a dichotomy or what? Okay, so on the Centauri, we find that Crichton, after scavenging supplies, finds some live lobsters, and he's preparing for his anniversary of the Nova 5 and his discovery. But unfortunately for Crichton, the rest of the team, because it is a surprise, have already made plans. Has that ever happened to any of you before, where you've actually had this surprise all planned out, or being a victim of something where you've been surprised and got, actually I'm going there, I've made plans already? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes.
Don't think so.
I'm not going to elaborate because I was... And also, I don't want to talk about my ex. Any of them?
That's fine. But it has that, speaking of that kind of aspect to it, it has that kind of like, we talked about Crichton, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago, about the kind of the pansexual kind of aspect of his character in this series, that he's able to play this kind of character in this way, and it's not something that would have been portrayed anywhere else and at this time. And I think it's interesting that we do get that, and we get a continuation of this in this episode.
Yeah.
That he's gone through all the trouble to do all of this planning, and it just instills this kind of friction between Kachansky and Crichton, and it does it again here, and it does it in a way which is a total situation. I know I've been talking about dramatic comedy, but this does it in a total sitcom kind of way of like, he's prepared everything ready for this lovely dinner that they're going to have, and they're off to go and play with their friends. And I think that's it. As part of the episode, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think this scene is something that a lot of people could empathise with. Perhaps not everybody would respond in the way that Crichton did, but I felt Crichton's pain quite significantly in this scene. But on a lighter note, this has my quotable Red Dwarf. Basically, anything that is with something, and I'm trying to put a little bit of a comedic slant on it, I will always say, Allah. Like, to mean with. I do that a lot. I don't know whether I got that from this particular episode. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. It's a bit of a tenuous one, but I do that a lot. That's the thing I do. It's not been that quotable, actually, Series 7. There's been a couple, but it's not been as quotable as previous series.
For me, it's the same with Smeg-Ups. Some of the Smeg-Ups in this, I remember, like the one in Duck Soup, for example, and there's a couple that has been in there, but not to the level that, you know, the Smeg-Ups and Smeg-Outs did for the first 6, the 3 to 6, for example. But I think that's because I played them on a loop, whereas these ones are on the DVD. So playing the DVD, it was like, I got straight to that. But there is a couple of moments, it's like, oh, I remember that. Oh, yes, that's coming. And I think that's kind of the same kind of thing. Are any of you cartoonivores?
Right, I have a massive issue with cartoonivores. He says that he doesn't eat anything that's ever been a cartoon. So,
He's had Space
Porky
Weasel
Pig,
before, definitely.
Scrooge McDuck, and Cow and Chicken. Does that mean he's a veggie? And that was an easy list to do, you know? That joke just didn't hit with me.
It's interesting, the animals they do decide to. It's weevils, rabbits, dogs, cats, mice, and roadrunners.
I mean, I don't know if you can get Roadrunner anywhere, but I don't think anyone eats mice, do they?
Unless they're really, really, really desperate.
My cat goes for mice. I don't think she's ever caught one because she's not very bright. But I think what we were talking about before was how the holosuite is used a lot here. And Series 7 does that a lot. And what was Star Trek doing in 1997, Kurt? Because it's clearly Red Dwarf's version of the holodeck. Was Star Trek a big thing in 97, or was that when it was at its resty point where everything had finished?
It was the golden era of Burnham, because Deep Space Nine was on and Voyager just started. Star Trek Voyager just started.
It was on Series 3 of Voyager, I think, wasn't it? 97.
Was it 90? I thought Voyager was 96.
Would have been Series 1 and 2 when they was writing, filming this, wouldn't they? 95, 96,
sure Voyager was 96 because I was 16 when it came out, I'm sure it was.
Yeah, so, I mean, they were still using the holodeck a lot in Voyager, so maybe it's just they've realised they're onto a good thing, and or they want to kind of poke Star Trek like they always have done.
Yeah, and it's also, you've got to remember as well, if you think back to episodes like, I'm trying to think which the one where they did it on the lot, you know, with the Kinitawari. They actually used that set because it was available to them. And using a set like this, and it's same with Star Trek, it's a cost-effective way because you're using the wild elements rather than actually having to build a set or to record on the set and things like that. So there's an element of that as well. We could just go into the forest next door and go and film a few things, which obviously adds to the elements. You know, you've got you're kind of slave to the elements of raining and things like that. But there is that, well, during the writing process, we can maybe do X, Y, and Z if I've got this idea. And I'd say, well, because Jane Austen world was going to be something that I was going to bring up, because you've got things like Westworld, you've got the Coming of the Apocalypse, you know, you've got the Wax World stuff with the Wax Droids. You know, it is a repetitive aspect of the episode, but you do have an added element in the Jane Austen novels because you've got the filter through Kochanski.
Yeah, and I think Jane Austen world would have been something that they would have struggled to do without Kochanski, because you do need a highbrow character for it to work, and she's brilliant in Jane Austen world. I think it would have maybe fallen flat if they were all a bit whereas something like the medieval world that we saw Lister in earlier in the series worked perfectly without Kochanski. Whereas I think this needed Kachansky. Throughout the series, the integration of Kachansky, I genuinely think it's been done so well. And I don't remember that being my opinion at the time. I remember being like, fuck this, I don't want Kachansky, I want Rimmer. But with a bit more of a kind of grown-up critical eye, looking at it for the podcast, I guess, I'm like, this is actually fucking sublime.
What do you think, Matt?
I think I think the setup for it, I think works well. I think so where you have Kachansky's, I want to bring some highbrow culture that's beyond, guess, the body parts of the crew member, to basically to take them onto Pride and Prejudice world. Which, to be fair, saying in character is pretty much the cat saying there's all babes in this. But then again, I could envision an alternative Series 7 where Chris Barry was in every one, where perhaps they suddenly find new stuff and the only thing that works is Pride and Prejudice land, and they get stuck in there. So I can probably envision them getting trapped in something they're not that well versed in. But I don't
think it would work as well, though, because the point is that Crichton is feeling that Kachansky's taking them away from him.
Yeah, yeah, but I like the idea that this is also using another excuse to try and highlight how different Kachansky is to everyone else, and that I'll try and bring some semblance of culture to it, but guarantee that Lister and the cat are just going to basically use it for what Lister always does, just try and use it to cop off with the hot females.
And I think as well, talking about the playground stuff of, you're taking my friend away, that Crichton is playing that here, that when they get, and I know I'm jumping around because I do this because that's the way I work, when they come back to the dinner, that Kachansky is built into that universe now. The social construct of, she's kind of interloped into that segment. So you've got Kat, Kachansky, and Lister as a team at that point, and they're all like, "I'm sorry, Crichton." They're all looking like, they've all been told off, kind of thing, and they are sitting there being a bit petulant because they're kind of going, "Oh man, we've been told off by the leader of the house," kind of thing, and I think it works in that regard because obviously the general theme is that.
I think you're right, and I think it's really well done the way they formulate a new demographic compared to what they had with Rimmer, and going back to Pride and Prejudice world, there's so much to love, particularly when Crichton invades it. The fucking blowpipe. It's just... So, the first blowpipe gag is great.
It's one of the funniest moments when you just hear the...
That's what I was going to say. The first blowpipe was brilliant. The second blowpipe, where she's screaming because she's in a trap, and then she's like, I just... honestly, I howled. I've said this before on this podcast. If I'm watching something on my own and I laugh out loud and it's an uncontrollable one, that's a funny gag. And it's because it's such a dignified little, young woman who's then put in a fucking trapper's trap and then it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. Brilliant. How can you dislike this episode with that gag in it, Matt?
See, I didn't mind this first bit and the basically the Roadrunner style, the Wile E. Coyote style kind of gag of Crichton hunting down the Bennett sisters. I thought was quite funny, with the idea that where he's kind of stalking the prey, and when he basically tries to harm Alone.
Yeah, the log.
The one with the log and misses and hits himself. I thought that was pretty much well done for kind of a physical comedy gag that the show doesn't do in the same style, doesn't do in that style that often. I thought that was pretty well timed and well shot. So that bit doesn't bother me. It's later on when I get more critical about it. But that I think this starts quite well.
Oh, okay. So what world would you want to have in AR if it was based on a book? What world would you want to go to?
Considering I'm in the middle of reading them, the Discworld.
That's a very good choice.
Yeah, thankfully it will be AR. I don't think I would actually like to go there in person, but being able to virtually walk through Ankh-Morpork, the city of Ankh-Morpork, will probably be amazing.
That would be huge.
Basically walking over but well, you could walk over the River Ankh.
What about you, Kurt?
Got one. I can cheat and say the Enterprise D and just read one of the novels.
I mean, I'll allow it.
It's got to be a franchise built on a book. Yeah, good. I reckon you need to pick a franchise that was a book first.
I don't think I've read a book.
A book.
No, I have read books, but I haven't read much fiction. My books are all like Tricks of the Mind, Derren Brown, or the quantum universe. Everything that can happen does happen. It doesn't really work if you want to go to quantum mechanics. And then it's all I read like a lot of biographies, like Robbie Fowler's book and Robbie Williams and stuff like that as well. So I tend to read more stuff like that than actually like stories.
Fair enough. I mean, I would quite like to go to Philip Pullman's kind of Book of Dust, his Dark Materials world. That would be a cool place to explore. Lyra's Oxford would be nice to explore. I'd enjoy that.
I wouldn't mind going there to see what my demon would be.
Yes, mine would probably be a cat.
I laugh if you turn out to be a dog.
I don't dislike dogs. I'd be happy with the dog.
Or the most uncat-like creature ever or something
This
like that.
is when I do my friends thing like Joey does, where he buys like a letter of the encyclopedia and then starts talking about one letter for like 6 minutes, and then you all go off talking about something else. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just going to go in and sit in the corner.
Have you genuinely not read his Dark Materials?
Oof.
Oh, well worth a go, mate.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, sorry, I'm more of an autobiography or science book reader.
Fair enough. But I think Matt and I have covered it with good picks.
I don't know what you're talking about, but you are.
Let's move on.
Okay, so Crichton eventually brings in a T-72 tank, which isn't a T-72 tank, it's a T-54 tank. So it's wrong.
I'm not upset by this. I'm not strong.
He also says that the T-72 was from this World War II game, so he must have put some sort of cheat in there because the T-72 was built in the 1970s.
Nerd!
Coming soon, the tank cast.
And an unfortunate nerd thing, the T-72s are currently still the type of tanks that Russia are using against Ukrainians. The Ukrainians mainly use the T-64s, and they all come from a factory called Urovagon Zavod, and it's translated as Ural Railroad Car Factory, based in Russia. So that's for me was interesting, just seeing the different types of tanks that people or the Russians have actually built, and you know a lot of them are being used in the war at the moment.
Well, let's just very quickly say fuck you, Russia, and solidarity with the Ukraine, and fuck you, Russia again. Because fuck you, Russia. Well, it's more fuck you, Vladimir Putin, really. I've got no problem with individual Russian people. But fuck you, Vladimir Putin.
Absolutely. And I'll probably get like sort of someone will come on the podcast and say, it's not a T-54. You've got that wrong as well. Because I'm trying to remember if it was a T-54, but I'm not 100% sure if it was or not. But anyway.
The tank cast coming soon.
The tank cast.
We're not doing the tank cast.
Because of that, he's a bit upset, is our Crichton. We will have to say about that explosion, because apparently that Robert Llewellyn had said that neighbours had complained about that explosion. They weren't expecting it to be that big. And he said something like, there will still be parts of it coming down in decades to come, is what Robert Llewellyn said.
That gazebo was made of explodium. It was magnificent. I have always loved a huge explosion in an action film. I love it when something that wouldn't explode anything like the way it does in a film does, because film physics, something's made of explodium. And you don't get things made of explodium in Red Dwarf very often. But when they do, why not have the biggest explosion About a gazebo? Mr. Bingley's gazebo? Mr. Bingley's gazebo.
Mr. Bangley's.
Wonderful.
It is
Very
captured as
clever.
well on the Robert Llewellyn on the DVD. It's probably on the Blu-ray as well, where he does a documentary, or was meant to do a documentary, and kept forgetting to record the thing. So they've just got bits of him like recording bits. But he does get that one. I'm pretty sure he's like, oh, fuck, like that, or something along those lines when the actual explosion happens, because he's filming it at the time. But they keep ribbing him for it. They keep saying, oh, here's Robert. He's remembered to press record this time and stuff like that, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So he's disappointed because he's saying supper is served, and that's when, as I say earlier on, when we get back to the table and they're all a bit like sort of coy about everything. Now, you last week, Mark, talked about ketchup. Ketchup is brought up here. Ketchup?
You what? Brown ketchup? I am a massive fan. Again, going back to action movies, horror films, I'm a huge fan of practical effects. If you can do something with practical effects rather than CG, I'm much, much happier. And the explosion head is fantastic. It's fantastic practical effects. I love that so much. I love how it jolts and it makes it look like he's kind of had a moment where his programming's just gone, fuck no, and then it explodes. It's just perfect. Perfect.
What do you think to the explosion, Matt? Because you can tell it's like a rubber head, but I actually like it because of that. Same as you, Mark.
So I think it's fine. You can kind of see the jump cut to the model, though.
I think that's what I like
I think
about
that's
it.
deliberate. I think it's supposed to be like a glitch the glitch, and then it explodes after the glitch happens. I think that's deliberate, and it's done so well.
I don't know. I think it stands out a bit to me.
I think that's what makes it funny. It to me, it's kind of like the same as the little rimmer that gets fired out of the when he's doing the driving lesson. I love that bit because of that, and this is a similar thing for me. It's so obviously a model, but the fact the way it's done, it actually works really well.
I don't know, that junk kind of stood out to me. Like, don't make that face in the curve.
I think it's interesting that you can have two polar opposite opinions about it, because I think the jump cut makes it, because it highlights that he's a robot. It highlights that his circuits have gone wrong, and then the explosion happens. I wouldn't be surprised if that was deliberate.
Yeah, I don't. It feels weird to say cheap into Red Dwarf, but I don't know. I assumed at that point we've seen slightly better effects.
Okay, I disagree, but let's move on.
Yeah.
And I love it when it happens both of the times his head explodes. There's like something hanging off Lister's ear or hanging off his head. I think that's brilliant that there's like little bits of electronics that land on Lister both times. I loved that.
For me, what makes
Nice
it as
touch.
well, that not just before the explosion, is when he says the ketchup thing, and Kachanska goes, "Oh my god!" It's like she knows. She's like, "Oh no, what have you done?" Yeah, I just love. Oh my god! It's like, no, this is going to be bad. He's obviously they go looking for the spare parts, don't they? This is the kind of the aspect of this episode, is that they can't find. So Lister logs onto the mainframe. They find the actual, potentially they can find the ship that they can go back to, and we've got the cat saying about, is it the 23rd or 24th century? Is it the 25th, 26th century? And then later on, which doesn't really land for me, when he says, "Oh, could it be the 29th?" I'm not quite sure. I understand the concept and the humour that's involved. I don't think it quite lands for me, that.
I think what I like about that gag is it's kind of an acknowledgement of how they're not clear on the timeline of Red Dwarf. I think it's almost meta in that respect, and that made me smile.
Yeah, I think I've seen it happen in episodes or TV shows before, where his thought process is continuing on after the subject is gone. Because he says 20. It says, I don't know, 19th, 20th, 21, 22, or whatever it may be, and then have a little bit more of a conversation about the fact there's we'll log onto the mainframe and we'll do X, Y, and Z, or we might have located something, and then he says, maybe 29th, and it doesn't quite land. I know what they're trying to do, and I've seen it happen before a lot more effectively. I'm just not quite sure the actual delivery lands on that one for some reason. They go to the ship and they see all of the spare heads that they're looking for, and they see that all the primers are missing. They then hide under the blanket, at which point I get giggles on this one, where he goes, "Hey, you smell quite nice. Thanks." It's just wonderful.
As an effeminate man who doesn't leave the house without aftershave on, I absolutely get the cat's response there, because it's nice to smell nice.
I'm assuming that Lister was actually speaking to the cat.
Yeah, it probably was, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's just like, so I'll do that. And also, we get you mentioned about the class thing as well, that we have the joke about Hugh, and then she goes on to talk about that Hugh joke and the fact that if she was at a conference, then that would have gone down like a storm. Which I thought was a nice little touch for the character. I'm not quite sure it lands quite right, because especially it's like, well, it's pronounced Hua. It's like, well, that's not the joke, is it? But I appreciate what they're trying to do there.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, that's another joke that hits, because I think that's very similar to the cat joke, where you've got kind of like two character jokes where you can kind of see what they're doing, but I don't know, it seems very misjudged. So yeah, that's again to that ilk that haven't landed in succession.
I think what's useful about that joke, I do agree that it doesn't land particularly well, but I think what's useful about that joke is it's another one that's designed to make us like Kaczynski, because regardless of whether or not we were the intellectual in the situation, we've all been in the situation where you've cracked a gag that you thought was amazing, and everyone looked at you and you've had that feeling where that you just feel so dumb and so out of water when you crack a gag that doesn't land. And I think it's really nicely done to give us more empathy towards Kaczynski, but you're right, it isn't very funny.
Yeah, which fully explains everything that I say on this podcast. Like, I think I'm a hilarious genius, but it all just lands flat.
But what are you laughing for, Mark? That wasn't funny. I don't know what you're talking about.
I was humouring him.
So I'm going to go the opposite way. I am. Matt will probably actually understand this. I don't understand this, but we at my work we used to do large conferences, and one of the conferences that we had was a conference on Scala, the programming language, and there's loads of like super highly intelligent people that will come to the site, and they would have a 60-foot IMAX screen. And I don't know if anyone knows about programmers, but the programming language they use is like, the font is like 0.24. It's like the smallest font in the world, and they still manage to do it. And they have this on a massive screen, and they're talking about, obviously programming games for Xbox and all kinds of things, and absolutely right above my head, completely and utterly. And I think I'm fairly intelligent, but just ridiculous. And they have this event, and then they come into the main hall, and they have like an evening dinner, and they have a guest speaker on. The guest speaker came up. The crowd of about 300 people were on the floor, howling, laughing. And I'm going, no idea what you're talking about. I absolutely no idea. And then a joke came up about Data from Star Trek, and I got it, and I almost leapt up out of my seat, went, I get that one!
It's the Captain America, I get that reference. I say I'm not a programmer. I tried to program, and the minutiae and the technological stuff is ridiculous. And it is any programming language is like a separate language when you try and make jokes stuff, and the logic behind it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's way above my head.
These people were like logging in to like my projector. In the projector we've got a Wi-Fi router which isn't actually available Wi-Fi wise. It's actually hardwired in, and they managed, because they couldn't use the internet because they were struggling for IP addresses. Someone managed to like hack in to that router to get some internet connection. I'm like, It's not even broadcasting. How are they doing that? It was just like...
If it's hardwired, they'll be able to.
They weren't hardwired. They got into it somehow. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, you still can. They'll still be on the same network. So, so if you're on the wireless network and something's broadcasting, you'll be able to see everything on that network, including the wired connections. So you'll be going through. You'll just need to get through to the IP address of that router, and then just basically act it as a makeshift proxy. So it goes out to the. That's how they probably have done it.
No, sorry. What was that? I was having a lovely dream.
Would you like to go to a navigation conference with Kachansky? I would. I'd do it.
I mean, if I was going to go with a hot woman, it would be Kachansky. I'd go with Craig Charles.
If you're talking fictional characters, part of me would probably prefer Holly Turner to Kachansky, but again, Crime Traveller.
I will divulge something here, that despite that she is dressed up as a Gelf, the way she says, "Come on, boy," was quite nice.
Yes, I can see that.
I just have to close my eyes when she says it. Because I don't want to be... So...
I love the Gelf outfits. I love them so much. They're great. But what I love about it is that, they pretend to be Gelfs, not knowing that the Simulan has a Gelf friend.
Yeah.
And that's a really nice touch. And while I think about it, a Gelf, a simulant, and a drug addict mechanoid. If that doesn't sound like a group from the Red Dwarf RPG, I don't know what does.
Definitely.
With like role players trying to play the coolest character they possibly can. And I can say that I'm a role player, by the way. And it's just a role playing party. And I'm living that. I like that a lot.
No, it is good. What is also good is that Cat does so well. He tries. He does try, bless him.
the bit where he goes, where he's like saying that's one. It's just so good. I mean, he's trying to say I speak a little bit. I just wonderful.
And what I like actually. And just a small, minute detail. During obviously, he's basically speaking English, and you've got Kachansky going, and Kat's going, "Oh yeah, I know," and doing all that kind of thing. But also the nature of like sort of the fact that the simulant's talking like, "You speak Earth," which I thought was quite a nice touch. That you speak Earth, it wasn't like. You speak English, you speak Earth, which I thought was a nice touch. And obviously the simulant's got this toss a coin thing going on as well, that he makes decisions based on that. I did have to rewind it this time because I've not really paid attention to it. Because I was thinking, is it like the Two-Face kind of aspect of it? Is it like a double, two-headed coin or something? But it isn't, it's just normal. 50% chance of whatever you want to choose. Even like sort of the foreshadowing as well in this conversation, because he says like don't trust, the greatest droids, never trust them, and you shouldn't trust them because they go back to the ship and they've been raided and Crichton has gone.
I love the surprise of Abel. Having Robert Llewellyn playing is great because they're all supposed to look the same. I think it wouldn't have worked if they'd got someone else to play him. And Robert Llewellyn does very, very well at playing a completely different character, I think.
He does. It's unrecognisable. I can't hear anything of Robert Llewellyn in his portrayal of him. I can see Matt like sort of twirling his little moustache going, I'm not sure I like this bit.
See, now, again, I don't have an issue with like the prompts and stuff. It's I think...
Do you have an issue with any of this episode, Matt? Just asking a question. You were about 20 minutes into a 27-minute episode, and we're not quite there yet.
You can say that about the plot, actually. So what the whole general... Because So at this point, you got it's supposed to be about like what Crichton's kind of pettiness or something, but then I don't think that point gets really kind of hammered in until like the very, very end, and I don't think it's.
Do you think it's the nature of the fact that it has been pulled together from different desperate parts, that it came from a story by Robert Llewellyn, which has been edited and drafted so many times that it's become a little bit like our Toffee Crisp episode, where the beginning doesn't really factor into the end, if you see what I mean?
It's like middle. It's the kind of it's like the post season 8 Simpsons, where it seemed like the first act is completely different to what the actual plot is, but it seems like all these elements for what might make a good episode gets thrown in at the very end, in like at the end of like Act 2, so you don't really get the idea of what Abel's supposed to be kind of representing. Doesn't really feel like it's given enough breathing room. I think if this was in an earlier series, Abel would probably have been introduced. Like,
okay, so asking this question then. So the idea of this episode up until this point, and what we've discussed so far, is that Crichton's been quite neurotic over the series. That this has come to a literal head in the fact that his energy from his neurosis has actually caused him to like sort of blow his top. And where's the lesson there? You know, on like how does he come to terms with that? And that's kind of the story. But do you feel that doesn't really land with the end part of it? Is that where we're getting at?
Yeah. I don't think it lines up because I don't think the episode reveals what it's trying to do until like the very end, where there's a scene between Crichton and Lister where he's saying like, "Oh, it appears that blah blah blah, let the best emotions of me," but that feels like it's tacked on to try and explain like, shit, we need to. And as someone who's attempted to write stuff and has done this in the past, like you do all the stuff and like, crap, I need to explain what's just happened, and we're going to retcon to fit what's just happened, to fit into the story and stuff, and that's what it feels like. It feels like the main theme of the episode of explaining, and I mean, it's only been to you just said now where it feels like it's supposed to be like a key part of the arc of Crichton for this series, where it's a build up that I don't feel that it's never really kind of demonstrated as being the point, or it's not clear that that's what it's supposed to be. Yes, and when you start getting to the concept of like Crichton being more, where it's supposed to be kind of Crichton being very introspective, or an introspective episode, it either happens too late and the episode doesn't allow it time for that to kind of breathe and to kind of highlight more of the contrast between Abel and Crichton. Because I think Abel's supposed to represent what could happen if Crichton didn't have Lister, or like the support system that Crichton has. So if Abel had his own version of Lister to help him break his programming to the point where he would be able to lie and stuff, then like, Abel probably not have got addicted to whatever the thing he's addicted to is. Crichton's got that emotional hook with the crew of the crew of Starbug to be able to kind of ground him, and not go down the kind of route that Abel did. But I don't think the episode highlights what that exploration could have been. And I think it's kind of a missed opportunity.
Let's look at that then from where we get, because we do have the reveal of Abel, and the fact that he's asking for his name, that is, he's the same mechanoid as Crichton is, that they've had the same history, because he's saying that they obviously all died and he's got the same history as them. So it's that fork in the road aspect that they've brought into this conversation, that Abel's gone down one road and Crichton's gone down another. Like you're saying, the Red Dwarf crew have probably shaped that, and the simulant has shaped the way that Abel is, and he's been used as a slave in a lot of ways, and actually and he's used by the very nature of his addiction. Then you've got I mean, obviously the jokes within there we should maybe talk about because they are funny. The fact of like, let me check to send that down the retrieval, which is wonderful. They're saying the same motherboard as well. Oh, it makes you my bro, all that type of thing. So I understand that they've kind of gone for that fork in the road stuff. It's I suppose it's like the stuff that happens afterwards that, does it become an episode about Abel more than it should do, because it's all about Abel's kind of last hurrah and like he's actually doing something good, that Abel is capable of doing the things that Crichton is potentially possible of doing, and does it flip that a little bit too much, Mark? I don't know what you've been thinking while we've been listening to this.
I mean, the guest star sacrifice is very, very tropey. The kind of establish this guest star, make you kind of like him, and then kill him off. It happens a lot to try and get like an emotional response without killing off one of the main cast. But I do think it works really well here. I think you see someone who it's almost like the Rimmer parallel that's always referenced in Red Dwarf, that different upbringings for the same person could potentially mean they have very, very different lives. And that it's another history repeating itself. Our Rimmer became Ace, and this bad version of Crichton does an honourable thing. So, no, I quite like it.
I think the name, spelled differently from the Cain and Abel, but I'm wondering whether the name Abel was a holdover for perhaps a more Cain and Abel inspired story between.
I thought that. Every time I hear it, it's like it's Cain and Abel, isn't it? That's what the brother thing kind of going with it, but
they don't really. But again, they don't capitalise on that. So I'm assuming that's a holdover from another draft where there was more of a direct parallel between the Cain and Abel story, which I'm trying to remember how that story goes. Is it Cain that kills Abel, or is it the other way around? Am I getting the right?
Isn't Cain lives forevermore? I think it might be Abel that maybe gets killed. I can't remember.
Yeah, Cain murdered Abel. Cain was the first murderer.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. And then wasn't his punishment forever life? It was to live forever, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, he's Crichton the parallel to Cain, because isn't the thing that Crichton killed the crew members?
So did Abel.
For the Nova 5.
So did Abel. Kachansky's plan. What I like about Kachansky's plan is the linguistic kind of syncopation that we get actually in the way that it's delivered. It says, well, exactly, if we're leaving here, then this happened. Well, what will happen? Well, exactly. Well, what do you mean? Well, exactly. That cadence and that kind of rhythmic kind of speech, I think, works in its own as a separate entity of the way that Kachansky and the crew deliver those lines when they're running away from the ship to get the bomb, and it's like, oh, so we did plant a bomb. All that stuff. It actually does really work really well, and I think it's a good build up, and I think it's a nice little, couple of scenes there.
I like it that it again highlights that Kachansky's an officer and she's a great tactician, and I really like that. I don't feel at any point there's obviously the battle of the sexes thing going on as a small theme of the 8-episode run here, but I don't feel there's ever been a point where they've suggested that Kachansky is bad at her job because she's a woman. And I like that she is competent, and I like that this works, because I think it's important that she is good at her job.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that she hasn't got the resources, crew, support. Basically, she's if she was surrounded by 3 completely different people, the stuff that she's yes would work.
Yeah.
But then again, what she doesn't have, she doesn't have the kind of not selfless, the heroic nature that perhaps Lister has. So Lister's kind of moral center and kind of moral kind of center of the show. I think Katanti doesn't have that, so she probably wouldn't. She probably had these tactical ideas, but then probably would not be gung ho to go in to rescue someone like Lister has probably have done in previous series.
Yeah. So the next scene, it frustrates the hell out of me, this bit, and it's me. There's a song by Snow Patrol, and I've heard it thousands of times, and it sounds like another song. And for the amount of years that I've been listening to it, I don't obviously think about it every day, but whenever I go back to it, I'm like, what does that song sound like? It really frustrates me. There's something in my ether, in my brain, that says that song sounds like this song, and I can never work it out. And I've got the same issue here, because there's the thing about the creator and actually, look into that file and see what what your creator was, the whole point of Crichton's existence. That's in something, and I cannot for the life of me remember what I've seen that in. It must be a film, it might be a TV show, it might be on several films and several TV shows. It's quite tropey, but it really kind of like frustrates me, because I'm like, I've seen or heard that somewhere else, and I can't for the life of me remember where I've seen it.
Something like that, but like something like, oh, this is what your parents did or what your father did or something, and like it's never fully seen on screen.
Yeah, it's something like, like what Crichton does, activate a file which you've never been able to unlock before, and you can only unlock it because of X, Y, and Z. It's probably Star Trek. It wouldn't be surprising me it's something to do with data, to be honest with you, but it's just frustrating.
There's something similar with Bucky Barnes in the Marvel comics, where a certain set of phrases turns him into the Winter Soldier. Is that maybe what you're thinking about?
No, it's definitely about the creator. It's definitely about the creator of...
It's like it's a history, like an unknown kind of unseen revelation that's off screen that affects a character, but the audience isn't privy to it. Which is an effective trope, because then it leaves to the imagination of the audience to kind of fill the gaps in themselves. But yeah, no, that's something that's happened before. It's probably on tvtropes.org somewhere.
Oh, it will be. Yeah, it will be. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's like I'm thinking of a mixture of different things put together. It might even be in this episode, you don't know. There is, again, and this is something I wanted to mention as well, there's a Blade Runner type-esque Bandatelli kind of... Bandatelli? That's Twin Peaks. Kind of Blade Runner-esque kind of... song. It's Vangelis, isn't it? That's Blade Runner. In here, that synthy stuff, which I really liked. What I don't like is the 90s drum loops that are in when Abel pushes the Starbugs in the cockpit. It's a great little scene, but the 90s drum loop thing just doesn't age it well.
I love the 90s drum loop thing. It was super retro. That whole... I actually put in my notes that the electro rock music when they're in the asteroid belt is great. It doesn't quite feel Red Dwarfy.
Yeah.
I've never really feel like I've heard music like that before in Red Dwarf, but I did like it.
Sorry to go back. I've just looked into it, and do you know what my issue when I said that I've forgotten? I usually forget what this episode's about.
Yeah.
I've completely forgotten. We actually learn what that secret is.
Yeah, we do. Which I'm getting to next. So hopefully you remember what it's about.
Yeah. So this is to disregard all the stuff about us not finding out. Yeah, that's my reaction to the episode. I've forgotten an episode that I watched yesterday.
So the only thing I'd forgotten about this episode of significance was Lister's inside crescent kick. Holy shit, that's a hell of a kick. It's a full Sam Beckett style kick, innit? It's brilliant, and I loved it, and it came out of nowhere. He's never seemingly had any martial arts training before or after, and it doesn't... But I'll be damned if it wasn't beautiful.
He does a zero-G kick ball, doesn't he, in one scene?
That's true. He does do zero-G kickboxing. But that inside crescent kick, beautiful. And I'm pretty sure it was Craig Charles rather than a stunt double.
Yeah. In my notes, I've got Blade Runner-ish music, and then the following note is Lister's kick. So, yeah.
It's brilliant.
It is like, wow, that's an interesting one. So, Lister kind of brings in his story about his gran because of what Crichton's saying here, that he's found out what his maker was about, that, you know, we've got the John Warburton jilted her, and and the fact that it was made in that image because of that. So what do you make to this scene, Mark, with this reveal that Matt doesn't remember? It is low key, to be fair, Matt. I'm the same.
Yeah, it is a bit low key. I don't think it's a huge reveal. Yeah, okay, it is a bit low key and a little bit disappointing. But I don't remember or enjoy this episode for the Crichton backstory. I enjoy this episode for the dumb shit in fucking Pride and Prejudice world.
I think that's it, isn't it? Because I think looking at Rimmer's story that we see time and time again, that there's emotional weight to it. Crichton's a difficult one because he has no real emotion, or he's struggling with that, or struggling to build on that, and he's never really talked about his creators that much before that we can really hold on to. There's not like it being a burning story or a burning question that we've had since Series 3, is it?
Nah.
We've not really, it's not been a question about where's Crichton come from. It's always been like, well, he's part of Diva Droid, so why do we, there hasn't been a point of like, why does he look like that in a lot of ways? So I think that's probably half the problem. And I would say to Matt, as I say with the low key stuff, that this is probably the part of the episode that I don't remember. I remember the Jane Austen stuff. I remember the simulant stuff. I remember Kachansky getting away in the bomb, and I remember the Abel, he ain't heavy. But I don't. This is the bit that doesn't resonate, and I think that's probably the why, because there's no emotional weight to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Oh yeah, no, I think that's probably down to it. And again, it might be my kind of Rimmer being favourite character bias, but I do think that perhaps there's a more of a emotional weight, as you said, to perhaps the Rimmer stuff. I think, then again, I think that's probably been seeded a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's the problem.
By the character himself.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. It's not been seeded. That all we've had from Crichton is break his programming, not where he came from.
Yeah.
That's that, and this is like, oh, he's come from here, right? And and it's like a throwaway. And I think that's probably part of the problem. I mean, the length of his groinal attachment is an interesting line. And the actual title of the episode falls so flat. I don't know about yourselves, but what do you mean I'm not beyond the joke? I'm like, ugh.
No, I agree with you on that. And I also think that the lead up to He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother gag, which isn't all that funny, there's a lot of stuff that was clearly put in so that they could make that gag that I don't think's great. And Abel doesn't seem to be in particularly bad nick. The whole episode previously had been about fixing a droid whose head's exploded. And Abel doesn't seem to have anything like that level of damage, yet they can't fix him. It's just done to crack that line.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, I suppose the Ultrazone stuff, but then he would have a spare head.
Yeah.
So if he had a spare head,
because they got spare heads for Crichton earlier in the episode.
But they haven't got the primers, though, have they?
Okay, but still,
I think it depends if you think about. I'm slightly going to get kind of technical a bit here. Whether all the internal stuff all the internal brain stuff is in the base unit rather than the head, where the head's just an output device.
Well, the head's obviously just
like a monitor.
The head seems to have a massive RAM storage issue. I mean, which, you know, if we wanted to get technical about the RAM stuff, but which isn't as bad in this episode, but the previous episodes kind of like, I'm not quite sure fully understand the RAM issue, because you'd only use RAM for the stuff that he's currently doing, not
It's short-term memory, yeah.
So I have that issue with Ticket to Ride, but I know I do.
Right.
But in this one, it's right. I think in this one, from what I remember, it's more of the cache, but it's like clearing the cache in Ticket to Ride is more like where he's got thousands of like subsystems and stuff like that, which needs to be deleted, which need to defrag it. But RAM doesn't work.
Well, if it's defrag, you still would have had it.
Yeah.
He's just deleting like a bunch of hard.
He's deleting a solid state drive, isn't he? But they say it's deleting his RAM.
I don't know. Getting terminology wrong.
No.
And that was all for a RAM joke, as in like a sheep joke.
Yeah.
So
Nerds.
But
sorry.
but do you want me to briefly explain what RAM is in
No.
easy
It's
terms?
a great album, is what RAM is. It's a great album.
By who?
Daft Punk.
It's a boy sheep. Got horns.
I would suggest go home tonight or stay where you are because you are home and put on Random Access Memories because it's a great album. And that calls it to the end of this episode unless anyone wants to say anything else.
I had the TV tropes page for this episode up, and like I always find it quite interesting when they name like some of the names and stuff. Like they're called personal issues for a reason is the Warburton reveal. There's one called Tank Goodness. There's actually a trope called Tank Goodness. Yeah, and one called Gag Penis. There's a trope called Gag Penis, which is applied in this episode as well. Invoked by Lister on Professor Mannett's fiancé John Warburton. If the 4000 series are designed to look like him, then having seen Crichton's groinal attachment, that would explain the reason she took it so bad. But the one bit that's interesting is that I don't think is. I'm gonna get your opinion on is that there's a section called retcon where, and this is what they've got written down. Crichton mentions offhandedly he killed the Nova 5 crew, something that's not come up before, but was a part of Infinity Welcome's careful drivers, which explained Crichton caused the ship crash by washing the computers with soapy water.
It came up in a previous episode, like this series.
Yeah, it did. So they've already retconned that?
Well, I'm sure that's come up earlier as well, because isn't there I can't remember the episode.
I think that the retcon is he killed the crew. It depends on the semantics of the sentence, doesn't it? Did he kill the crew, or did the crew die of natural causes while he was there?
Because there's a bit, because I can't remember which episode. There's a bit in an early series where he mentions something, and then Lister goes, "You killed the crew." That's
the series. Which
episode?
Series 7.
Oh right.
It was like
yeah.
I think it was because it's when he starts to get the neurosis. It's like, you killed the crew, Crichton. I said, you won't do, because when he's talking about folding the iron in and stuff like that, and Kachansky's going to take him away from him, and he says, "You're going to leave me just like they did on the Nova 5," and then that's when Lissa goes, "You killed the crew, Crichton."
So that'll be Duck Soup then.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought it was slightly early in that, because I always thought it was,
because you've got the obviously the original Crichton, haven't you?
Yeah.
On that at that point.
Yeah.
But again, it's the semantics of they're talking about the book, but did he kill the crew, or did he just die of like the causes in which they died, and he blames himself for it. But then this is more of the retcon, but that's saying this episode. It wasn't. It was 2 or 3 episodes ago.
Okay. So I assumed it was neglect or something similar.
I can't remember what happened in the book.
I've still not finished the book. I've got the audio book that I need to finish.
Yeah, I've got the audio book. I've got both. I've got the book. I have actually got the book. I've got both books.
But you have a book on fiction?
I have a book on fiction. I bought it especially for this podcast. And to be fair, I did read it. I remember it's one of my childhood memories of reading this book. Whenever I went down to see my family down in Manchester, I used to always read this book because it was on the shelf that they had. I had a little spare room whenever I went down there, and it was always available to me. So I used to read that book whenever I was down there.
All right.
Yeah, so I do sometimes read, but so I'd have to be in the Red Dwarf world, really, wouldn't I? In that case.
That's a good answer to the question, I suppose.
Yeah. But the franchise was supposed to start with a book. That was the question. So it doesn't count, Kurt.
Yeah, okay, never mind. Never mind. Right.
Don't go to Game of Thrones world. You wouldn't have much fun there.
Okay, let's wrap this up, guys. Any final thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, I think there's some merit to what Matt says about elements of this episode not working, but there's a lot of fun to be had. Pride and Prejudice world's great. And the tank gag is great. Lister's kick is a thing of beauty. And the Gelf stuff is great. There is some stuff that does fall flat. But I don't think this is a bad episode. I think this is a lot of fun.
Talking about that then, in regards to the series as a whole, the series as in Red Dwarf 1 to 7, your general... You're at the moment, because we are at the new uncharted territory now, in the fact we've got 2 more episodes to go, which we haven't had before. We've always had 6 episodes. Do you think this is the weakest series overall, even though it is underrated?
No, I don't. I have very similar levels of affection for 3, 4, and 7. And that has changed since rewatching them.
I think 7's issues are production choices. I think conceptually, I think the episodes are good and decent. I think Chansky's a good addition. I think depending on whatever I'm watching, the weird non-studio audience episodes, single camera style comedies feel weird. But I think a lot of the moments in other episodes of this, I think, raise it a bit. I still think on this rewatch, doing this podcast, I'm surprised to think that Series 4 is my least favourite. I think Series 4 hasn't held up from nostalgic memory. I think, Series 4's got more weaker episodes than I expected it to be for me. But I think this is probably above just 4. But it's not the weak. I think I prefer this more than 4 anyway. So I think there are moments in this, and as a whole, I think if you binge watch it in like a day or two, it feels like a cohesive whole because of the more serialized nature of it. But I think in comparison to other series, though, I think the other series of a much higher standard means this is going to be near the bottom anyway.
Yeah, the stylistic approach for me is, and I've mentioned this in previous episodes, is I like it. I think Doug Nader's trying to find his feet with it. I think he goes backwards and forwards on it, as you know, Matt, because you've seen all of it, so you know what I'm talking about here. That he goes through moments of like really, really great highs, and then he tries something new, and it kind of doesn't quite work, or there's elements that work in this kind of this dramatic fashion. But you've got to get used to that style, and I think that's one of the issues that we potentially have. Even including 8, that you have these multiple stories and stuff like that. And
8's going to be a very interesting, because when we have this conversation again at the end of series 8, it's going to be an interesting conversation there as well, because it's again slightly different.
Definitely.
In particular structure and stuff.
Yeah.
Because there are a couple of things have always nagged me about 8, as much as I quite like it. But again, that's for future Matt to talk about.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's call this to an end for this week. Next week, we'll be talking about Epideme, I believe is the next one, isn't it? And then it's Nanaki after that. But before we do that, we have to ask where people could find you all online and what you're up to. So, Mark, go for you first.
If you're looking for me on Twitter and or Instagram, you can find me at MarkAdamsHC. And I've only got one of the podcasts at the moment, or at least at the time of recording, and that's Chucky Vision, which is a podcast about the Child's Play and Chucky franchise. It's been surprisingly successful, so if you like Chucky, then we're probably a good bet. And that's at Chucky Vision on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find me on my my solo podcast, which is Pick a Disc. Search for Pick a Disc on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. It is probably going to be me. And also my the time of recording, upcoming return to Ask Us About Loom, where I talk about point-and-click adventure games and other sorts of adventure games. And I am going to be hunting down any crossover potential of Red Dwarf related kind of things. If any, yeah. So I'm currently trying to find a guest who loves Simon the Sorcerer, which is voiced by Chris Barry. And I think there is a text adventure of Red Dwarf somewhere online that I remember reading about, which I can see the $ of special going from Mark already.
I don't think I want to do that. You and Carl can do that.
You don't have to be involved in every special, Mark. It's fine.
It's very rare that I'm actually involved in any.
Yeah.
Oh, well. All right. Okay. You can find me on Linktree. So linktr.ee/Rmuldrake, RMULDRAKE. What I'm up to there is all on there. So you can find my multitude of podcasts and YouTube channels and things. So feel free to come and see me over there. So that's the best place to find me. Thank you, both of you, for joining me for this wonderful discussion. It's been really intriguing. But until next time, remember...
Give me a minute. Bye.
Class.
100 years since Nosferatu first terrified audiences on the big screen.
30 years since Francis Ford Coppola gave us Bram Stoker's Dracula.
And 10 years since Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp.
Vampire Videos is a podcast taking a look at this iconic blood-sucking monster on film and television.
I'm Dan Owen.
And I'm Hugh McStay.
And we're here to guide you through a century of vampirism on film. From Hollywood's golden age with Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula,
to the more lurid hammer horrors of the 60s and 70s starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
through to the 80s boom in vampires, which brought these creatures of the night into the modern age.
And everything this century's had to offer us, from foreign and independent films, spoof comedies, and even teenage love stories. Yes, I'm talking about Twilight.
We aim to cover it all, one bite at a time.
So join us on a voyage into the depths of vampire cinema, old and new, with weekly guests offering their own insights and expertise. And why not follow us on Twitter @VampVideos.
A proud part of the We Made This podcast network, subscribe now to Vampire Videos, and thanks for listening.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast, was created and produced by Mark Adams and Kurt North. You can find us on Twitter @RedDwarfPod, and we are part of the We Made This Podcast network, which can be found online at wemadethispod.com or on Twitter @WeMadeThisPod.